Multipliers back hanging out with Blanco, someone that I personally talk to on a regular basis. Anything to do with finances, decisions in my business. I like the brain of Blanco. So we're talking about finance this month, and particularly if you didn't watch the last video, if you don't know, Larry consults a lot of different businesses at the same time in a lot of different industries. So it's really interesting because he, based on what he does, gets to observe what people have done well and mistakes that they've made during this, potential environment that we've just gone through. And that's what I want to understand. Like, Larry, what have you observed being in the world that you're in that I can take away and us as multipliers can? So the second principle is that there's no question that everyone got lean during this time. But I think what's going to happen is people get lean. The real question is, do you stay lean? And more importantly, do you use this pain to create some permanent pivots, might be the language that I would use. And you and I were even talking about Billy Alvaro and how he's utilizing this time to make a permanent pivot by moving his company virtual and get rid of the brick and mortar. So talk about this idea about getting lean, staying lean, and making some permanent pivots.
Well, obviously, when there's crisis that happens and people have to figure out a way to stay in business and conserve cash, they always look, that's really the time where they kind of look at their cash flow and they figure out, what's necessary, what do I have to have, it creates ingenuity on the folks of people in terms of, well, if I'm going to stay in business, I've got to lean out, and as you've indicated, a lot of people have done that. But I think what people have realized, especially as it relates to having offices and things like that, that I think this is going to be a permanent shift and a way to get lean and leaner as people are going to get more profitable because they have figured out that they conduct their businesses. And as you had mentioned, I had talked to Billy Alvaro as well. And, he's done a great job in leaning out his business. And I think it's going to be permanent, and it's going to actually give the ability to spend in other areas as well to create more revenue. So one of the things that I think is going to happen out of this is people that, for example, are not going to spend any more on office rent, and they're going to save that money. Not only they may save that money, and it actually may help create that war chest that we were talking about in terms of additional cash. But what they may do is they may reallocate those funds to other areas that are going to actually help create more income for them. So that's one of the things that I'm seeing that's going to come out of this, is that they're going to spend more money on marketing, virtual marketing, things like that I think are going to become really efficient and put more money on their top line and their flow through cash just by becoming lean, as people will figure out a way to spend it.
How do we maintain that type of tenacity around managing, as you would say, our expenses down to the gnat's ass? Like, how, as the pillow starts to soften, the pain starts to go away, what's something practically we can do to just maintain the intensity of leanness, which obviously allows us to put more net to the bottom line? What would you tell us as a CFO is a good practical way to maintain the gazelle-like intensity, let's say that Dave Ramsey talks about around expenses?
Sure. I would say that one of the things, Chris, you and I have always talked about, and I think people should start to gravitate toward this, is every person, every expenditure, everything. What is the multiple of that expense that actually ultimately will lead to income? Because that's the way that I always look at things, is whether you're spending on people that produce income, how much do you get out of that? Is it a 4X return? Is it a 3X return? Is it, if you're spending on administrative or some sort of administrative item, does that free up your rainmakers to make more money? The other thing that I think is really important, if people aren't doing this, always look at your expenses as a percentage of your revenue. We've always done that, Chris, with you, is we've always had the discussion, well, Larry, out of everything that I spend, what percentage should I be putting on my bottom line? And I think seeing yourself in terms of a lean perspective, we may talk about 30%, we may talk about 25%. And if you build from the bottom up, that will help you stay lean so that you can say to yourself, look, if everything's going well, I should be able to put 25% of my revenue should be flow through cash. And then you work from the
Yeah.
bottom up to kind of figure that out, you know?
Okay. So let me sum up those 2 points here that you just said. Number one, the mentality to maintain aggressiveness is you've got to justify every expense by a multiple. How is this adding to the bottom line of what we're doing? And again, that shouldn't be done alone. That should be done with your team around your finances. For example, that's
Absolutely.
me, Sierra, who's our COO, you, Scott jumps in on that conversation. And the second thing I hear you talking about is work from the bottom up. If you have a percentage profit that you want to hit and you focus on that number, it's going to squeeze out the other expenses that you have because you can't fit them in order to hit this critical target that you have in the sense of the profit that you want to hit. So great stuff, real practical, Larry, man. Appreciate your time on this, and Minute Multipliers, we'll catch you on the last video.